Oh, money.
Dude, that is so
where you
money.
want to be. I needed this one.
Today I'm going to be showing you how to do golf ball tracer effects in Adobe After Effects. There's other tutorials on how to do this all over the internet and on YouTube. Hopefully my way is pretty succinct, to the point, and quick. So let's get into it. So I was pretty much sent a sequence of a rough cut of different golf tracer shots. The main part of doing these golf tracer shots was just the driving, not many of the approaches and none of the putts and such. So I went through and picked out all the drive shots and I put it in a folder called From PR, which is just from Premiere. So I imported it into Premiere Pro, Adobe Premiere Pro, and then exported a bunch of MP4s to put into After Effects. So as you can see, I did a lot of tracers, but right now we're just gonna be focusing on tracer 17 because it's a pretty straightforward shot that I feel like would be the easiest to showcase. So I'm gonna play all the way through, just Danny hitting the ball and going pretty straight, and the camera's zooming in. And I like that the camera's zooming into the shot because there's multiple ways you can do this. If the camera is just stationary and not doing a variable zoom, then it's a super easy track. But even if it is zooming in, it's still a pretty easy track, depending on certain things, and maybe we'll get into that. So we're pretty much gonna redo this shot. So we're gonna go over to Tracer 17 MP4 and make a new comp with it. So this goes with importing any footage. Just drag it onto this icon right here and it will make a new composition exactly what the properties of the footage is. So the first thing I generally do is I go up to animation and I go to track camera. Or you can go over here and open up your effects and presets and just type in camera and then 3D camera tracker will pop up. But most time these days, I'm just going up to animation, I'm doing track camera. So it's gonna start tracking the camera immediately, but we wanna change this to variable zoom because the lens does zoom in. So we'll let that finish tracking, and it shouldn't take too long. I mean, it's instant with the power of editing. So now it's finished tracking. So if you click on the actual 3D camera tracker layer, you'll see all these points. Generally, I like to choose a point that's right where the golf ball is or right around where the golf ball is, but you can also go to where it lands, which I believe is in this area, and make a point there. But generally, I do it around where the ball gets hit, because that's where the tracer line starts. So we're gonna go here and we're gonna make a new null by right-clicking on these points. You can also drag and select a bunch of points, but generally, I just let the program do its thing and I just select whatever points my mouse is near and I hit create null. So we have a null and I like to go through and just make sure it's tracked. Seems to be tracked properly even with the zoom in. So that's the main thing you want to check, because this will literally not work unless your tracking is good. But if you have the camera on like a tripod and it's not moving whatsoever, not zooming in, you obviously don't have to do a camera track. But in this case, we have a lot of camera movement. Okay, we have our null. So the first thing we're gonna do is press G on your keyboard and go to where the ball was. Zoom in. I'm just pinching and zooming on my Mac, or you can control plus or minus or command plus or minus. So press G to make a shape layer. Make sure none of this is selected, because if you have this selected and you press G, it's gonna turn to a mask layer, and you don't want a mask layer, you want a shape layer. So deselect everything and press G. It brings up the shape creation tool, and then you're going to click on the golf ball. Then you now have this point on the golf ball, and then you're going to want to come down here to this cube and make it a 3D object. So you'll see right away it gets pushed up into the footage. We're actually just going to drag that down there, and then we're going to scrub through and make sure the point is still perfectly tracked onto the ball, and it is, or where the ball was rather. So now that we know the point is where the ball was and tracked perfectly, we're gonna go click on this drop down arrow on shape layer 1. Sometimes when I'm doing a lot of stuff, I don't take the time to rename everything, but if I'm doing, just a couple shots and I have more time, I'll go through and rename stuff. So right click on the shape layer. It's a really good habit to get into, honestly, and name this like golf ball tracer line, something like that. So click on this drop down, go down to contents, go down to shape, and then just go ahead and delete stroke 1 and fill 1 and just focus on the path. So now you have the path, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna draw 3 points. You can draw more points, but the more points you draw, the harder it is to get a good looking line. So unless you finesse it a lot. So we're just gonna make 3 points. We already have the first point, so we have where the ball gets hit. Then we're gonna go to the arc. So we're gonna zoom in. Sometimes it's really hard to track the balls. In this case, it's not. It's mostly in the tree line, so it's fine. Sometimes if it's in front of like a bright sky or like a cloud, it's like borderline impossible. But that's a whole nother thing. So just keep scrubbing through the footage, and we want to go to the top of the arc right before it starts coming down. And it seems like this is around where it starts coming down, so make sure your path 1 is selected and click on the ball. Now I believe it was getting hit to the left, so we're gonna make the line go to the left, and we can zoom out and we can see if we go back, it's more or less pretty spot on. Now we can actually adjust this because it's not as curved as I thought. So we're actually just gonna get rid of this. Go back to here and make the line maybe a little bit straighter. Like that. So if we zoom back out, that's good. The line doesn't have to be exactly where the ball goes, because when we add like the stroke or the actual line itself, it's gonna cover up some of where the ball goes. So let's go back to where the ball is starting to arc and then slow down. Now I actually lied. We're gonna add 4 points. We're gonna add a point where the ball completes its arc before it starts coming down. So we're gonna do this and just make it nice and curved. Again, doesn't have to match it perfectly, but that actually matched it pretty good. And then we're gonna follow the ball down. Now again, we're gonna have to zoom in a lot sometimes. And this is filming on an FX3 and it's still pretty pixelated when it zooms in. You just have to be really good about following where the ball goes. So we can actually zoom out a bit. Okay, so you see it bounce up right there? That will be the end of the complete arc, and it looks pretty good. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add the line itself, the actual stroke. Now for this video, I was instructed to add red strokes, so that's what I'm gonna do for this tutorial as well, but you can really make it any type of stroke you want. So we're gonna go over to add, and we're gonna hit gradient stroke. Then click the drop down to gradient stroke and go to edit gradient and just make both these points red. Okay, and then go down to where it says line cap and change it from butt cap to round cap. And the reason we're doing this is because so it's just a smoother line, because the ends of the line otherwise would just be squares and it honestly doesn't look good. So as you can see, there is a red line now, and if we move around, it is perfectly tracked into the footage, even when zooming in and the shakiness of the camera. Perfectly tracked, which is good. So now we're gonna go to stroke width and increase the width. So now if we play this back, pretty good. If you notice, as it zooms in, the line actually gets a little thicker. So what we're gonna do is, we don't want it to be too thick of a line. Like, we don't want it to be like that, right? Because that looks stupid. But we want it to be, you know, decently thick. We like that, okay? But when it zooms in, we want it to stay around that thickness. So we're gonna click on the stopwatch, which is how you add keyframes in Adobe After Effects. We're gonna click the stopwatch, go to where it zooms in all the way, make the line a little bit less thick. And then we zoom in again, and before we start zooming in, go all the way over to the left and add another keyframe, and then go to where we zoom in more and just make it like 55. Barely any thinner, and honestly, you don't really have to do this, but it just makes it look good, you know? So we're not quite done yet. So you notice there's no actual animation though, it's just the line all the way through, which is not what we will want. We want it to be animated a little bit. So we're gonna go back up to the add, and we're gonna go down to trim paths, because it's like the path is trimming. That's a good way to remember what to do. The path is trimming. Okay, so click the drop down on trim paths, and we're actually just gonna make the end 0. So then we're gonna go right before he hits the ball. And again, click the stopwatch. And this is when we have to kind of go frame by frame and make sure it looks good. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you want it to look pretty good. Like in motion, it's gonna look really good. But going frame by frame, you just wanna kind of finesse it a little bit. And if we need to kind of adjust the line a little bit, it's super easy to. See, it's not right on the ball, but it's, for the sake of this video, it's actually pretty good. And as long as it looks good in motion, that's what matters the most. Okay, so then we'll go down to the end and then work our way back. Okay, so then we're gonna work our way back a little bit and make sure it's probably pretty good. So now let's play that in motion and see how that looks. That's actually pretty good, and I'm pretty happy with that. But because you can clearly see it's off the ball's path a little bit, we're gonna go up to path and just adjust this ever so slightly. So we're gonna add another keyframe. You don't always have to do this, but sometimes you can finesse it just a little bit. As long as the top of the curve is pretty rounded, it still looks good. That's pretty good, and I'm pretty happy with that. I think anyone would be happy with that. Now you can either leave this up the whole time, but generally what I like to do is add the path disappearing at the end. So click the stopwatch at some point near the end, and then where you want the line to disappear, just make this all the way up to 100. And this I might have to make this longer, it might be too quick. That's not bad. Yeah, so that's pretty much how you do that. Now, that's honestly about maybe a 5-minute or less process for each shot, depending on how long it takes to motion track. And this is a pretty conventional shot. Like, the camera's not moving this way or in Z space too much. It's just stationary and zooming in. That's like the best case scenario. I mean, I guess really the best case scenario is the camera being on a tripod and no movement happening whatsoever. But this is a pretty good example of the camera zooming in and it's still being really easy to track. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video on how to make GOF tracers in Adobe After Effects. All right, see you next time. Bye.